everything. And
But in the world of this, yeah, like I'm on the business side, like I really understand the process of that particular industry, but the actual creation of the tech, I usually partner with people who are like developers or, scientists, like really smart in their area.
okay,
Yeah. And so
wow,
being able to do this myself without having to talk to designers, talk to developers is just, it's a game changer and it's faster, even if they're the ones who are doing it, like stuff that would have taken me 3 months and $15,000 in developer costs, I'm doing now in under a week and doing it myself. And,
wow.
so it's just
Hey,
a perfect way to test an idea, right? Because you have these, everybody has an idea for an app, all that kind of stuff, but you don't know if the market actually wants it. You think it's a good idea, but do others want it? So instead of spending all that money on development, you can just actually create it and build it and see if they want it.
interesting. Wow. Rooted Here, Business and Leadership Podcast. Welcome to Rooted Here. I'm your host, Duran Chetty, and today my guest is Katrina German from Ethical Digital. Hi, Katrina.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you
All
doing?
right, I'm doing good. Thanks for agreeing to come in and talk about ethical digital and all the stuff you're into. The very interesting stuff that really piqued my interest is the AI stuff you're into, stuff like that too. But let's get into a little bit of the background. Who is Katrina? Where did you come from? Were you born here in Saskatoon?
I was born here in Saskatoon, but I grew up in small towns around Saskatchewan. So
Okay, where?
Estevan, Young, Edam, Marshall, Dinsmore. After I graduated, I came here to university and I since lived in Brock,
Oh, well,
Macklin. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, so that's interesting. So the question that begs to be asked is, what took you to all these small towns?
Yeah, my dad was a teacher and then a principal. So I was a principal's
Oh,
kid, right? Which might explain a lot.
okay. All right. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I've been now in Saskatoon though now for about 15 years, and I've just been building companies and working in the technology and entrepreneurship communities.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit of your early years. Um, maybe the path to getting to where you are now. What led you to ethical digital, and what were you doing prior to that? And
Yeah.
what piqued your interest in the technology and
Do in my generation, our generation,
our generation? Yes, our
there
generation.
weren't a lot of options, it felt like, for careers, that were there for, women. It was sort of teacher,
Mm,
banker, maybe lawyer,
yeah. Yep. Yeah.
and a lot of, nurses, things like that. And so in my mind, I was just like, I want to make change in the world. I want to be a lawyer. So actually spent from grade 6 on in debate club. No matter where I lived, did debating. So
Okay.
I was secretly like, I was kind of a bad kid, and then I'd secretly go to debate club.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
And so I wanted to get into law. I actually represented the University of Saskatchewan at World Debating when I was in second year university.
Really?
So I got my degree in history because I was going to get into law. And I came home from World Debating and I was like, this just isn't my path. I was supposed to write my LSATs, everything, and just knew that was not the way for me. So I finished out my degree in history. I ended up in the nonprofit world for about 10 years where I had my babies, but I
Okay.
had two
Okay.
little boys. And at that point, too, I was also living on a farm. But I was helping
Really?
adults learn to read and write. Went through a divorce, but came back to Saskatoon with two little kids and had to figure it all out. And so basically, at that point, I was home, with them, and I was good at online, but I got really good on Twitter, and I could actually see how to make things trend. So I did a couple of large campaigns. One of them was. We worked with all the newspapers across Canada, Post Media, on a campaign called Raise a Reader, which was with all the literacy organizations across
Raise a
Canada.
reader?
Raise a Reader. So
Raise a reader.
talking about actually the things you can be doing
Right.
to, in early childhood development to make sure that kids have that opportunity. So we reached 2.4 million people in one day with that campaign. I think we were the first
Wow.
hashtag on the front page of all the newspapers. You can actually watch it that morning as everybody woke up and got their newspaper and went and checked that hashtag, we would watch it trend across Canada. So it was so cool. And so that just really got me hooked in the online space. I was just playing and kind of doing a lot of that work as a volunteer, but I was one of the first people in Saskatoon being like, hey, there's this thing called Twitter, there's this thing called social media. It could be good for your business. And from there, I ended up getting into technology, and that's its own story.
Well, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Wow, I didn't know that part of it. That's pretty fascinating. Were you always entrepreneurial?
I get that question a lot because
Mm-hmm.
my dad was a teacher and then a principal. My mom, piano teacher, worked in the banking system. So I guess a
Okay.
little bit through my mom because she ran her own, piano teaching
Do
business,
you play any
but
instrument? Do you play piano?
not very well. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so
think I
okay.
probably disappointed
All
her in
right.
that way.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it at that.
I can do a mean chopsticks.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it was one of those things where I think I kind of had to do a little out of necessity. My youngest son had a severe peanut allergy, and at that
Oh,
time, a lot of the daycares wouldn't accommodate that. They wanted to have peanut butter sandwiches for lunch. I get it, and so I really had
yeah.
to figure out
Mhm.
work that I found fulfilling, that would pay the bills, that I could support the children, and yet still have a lot of flexibility in my schedule. So it was really coming out of being a single parent and having to make it work
Okay.
around the needs of my kids.
Okay. So, that being said, what was the first business venture you got into?
So yeah, when my kids were still very young and I was actually still married, I did start sort of just playing. So I
And
started a video production company. So
okay.
actually, I got to know a lot of people at Bamboo Shoots through
Okay. All
through
right.
those
Okay.
years. I did a lot of sort of local things at that
All
point,
right.
and then I published a children's book, which
Oh,
is actually
really?
I've sold almost 10,000 copies of that over time. It's almost 20 over just over 20 years old
Oh, Well,
now,
well, well,
but
can you tell us the name of the book?
yeah, it's called A Wish for You.
A Wish
Yeah.
for You.
Yeah, and I did that under my married name, so it's written by Katrina Ham, but it's still
Katrina
available.
Ham.
Yeah,
So if I
yeah.
went to the bookstore after this and looked for it, would I be able to find
A
it?
little bit less so now. I might
Oh,
probably
okay.
re-release it, but back
Okay.
in the
Okay.
day,
Out of
yeah, we were
print.
in McNally, Robinson, and actually when I first released it, it was a hardcover because it was board books for young children,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so actually we competed against Harry Potter when it came out, and we actually beat them.
Oh,
We were bestsellers.
really?
Yeah,
Harry
yeah,
Potter?
because
When did
for the
Harry Potter
sales,
come out? Was it
yeah.
like late 90s or
Yeah, it was
80s?
way back in the day. Yeah. How old is my son? Yeah. It's like 2006 or something like that. It was
Well, that's something to say.
2008. Yeah, in that
That's a
zone.
feather in
Yeah.
the cap. Well,
Yeah, it was just
we
kind of
also.
cool to be across Canada, but really just that was in the early days of Facebook. And I had a lot of friends who'd moved to Alberta. And so I was able to actually do my book signings in Saskatoon and Calgary and Edmonton. And all my friends came and bought multiple copies at the same time. And see you later, Harry Potter.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Wow. Okay. What were or who were the biggest influences in your life?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Maybe up until then, and then we'll get into later on in
Yeah.
your career.
I'm definitely very, very close with my family to this
Okay.
day. My mom and my dad, I see them at least weekly yet. They're here in Saskatoon now.
Okay.
My brother and his sister-in-law and their kids are here too. My other brother's out in Kelowna. So I spend a lot of time with my family. And so I
Oh,
would
that's
say
good.
probably my mom and my dad are the people who probably influenced me the
Yeah.
most, definitely. And then Oprah, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I always thought she really did things were very hard. She made it work. She did it with grace. She tried to make the world a better place using her power, and I always really appreciated that about her.
Yeah. I mean, she was someone that came from nowhere to
Yeah,
become someone that everyone knew around the world. It was
yeah, yeah.
international.
And she bucked a lot of the trends. Like she did a lot of things that were completely unexpected, and I really appreciate that about her.
Yeah, she was kind of a prime mover, a catalyst for change in a lot of areas.
Absolutely, I believe she was one of the biggest influences for our societal change for quite
I
a
think so.
while. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, from what I actually watched her shows back in the day too. It's been a while, but yeah. Was there a defining moment in your life that made you realize that you had maybe a understanding or a passion for technology? We're going to get there
Yeah,
with
yeah. I
ethical
think
digital.
I think that the real thing, I sort of fell into it when it happened. I've just
I know
basically started a
I know you
project.
mentioned
Yeah.
the TikTok or the Instagram, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I had
Yeah.
a technology company that I
Y-
developed, and that
Yeah.
sort of accidentally happened, in which I was talking about that
Excellent.
campaign where we reached 2.4
Yeah.
million people at a conference for technology people. And at that point, my business partner at the time approached me. He said, "I'm a developer. Why don't I build something? You share it.
Hmm.
Let's see what happens." And that started a 5-year odyssey where we were in the top 15 startups in Canada. We were,
Really?
yeah, some of the best. Yeah, we actually did a lot of really cool things with that technology company.
What was
And
that company called?
it was called One Story.
One
And
Story.
yeah, and
Okay.
so what we did was, it was really kind of cool. Came with the idea that everybody has a story, right? And actually, first of all, senior stories. I'd done some projects about capturing senior stories and some video production
Okay.
work. And I was just like also doing a lot of social media at that time. And I was just like, man, why is video so freaking hard? Especially at
Yes.
that
Yes, it
time. It was
is.
just complex, and it was kind of before Facebook Live and authentic video and that sort of thing. So we created an app that you could basically ask questions. An organization could ask questions and then get responses through another app, through your desktop, and it would automatically stitch those video clips together into a little mini documentary. And so we had organizations around the world using us to tell stories about their impact and what they were doing in the world. So one of our bigger clients was United Nations Women. They were using us in Albania to have men stand up for women's rights.
Albania.
Yeah, so we were big in Albania for a while.
Okay. So
And
international.
yeah, we had people talking about why, PGA golf, we worked with them to talk about why it's important to support our veterans. We worked with all sorts of like just large corporations who wanted to, and nonprofits who really wanted to share stories of impact. And again, this was in the early days before Facebook Live, so it was, a lot of our job was actually teaching people and saying like, hey, authentic video is just as good as, as really highly produced video, a lot cheaper, but maybe
Right.
more powerful because it's people telling their
These like
stories.
modules or something.
Yeah, yeah. And so it would create automatically these little mini documentaries that they could be shared through social media. So I think really that company was just early. It was, before a lot of people were ready for that technology. And
Ahead of the curve.
yeah, I do. And so, I even still get requests for that technology. It doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer
Okay. Wow. That's
available, but
fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
It's made an impact.
Yeah, yeah, it
Great.
did. Yeah.
If you could go back, let's think about this. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what kind of advice would you give yourself about what you know from what you know now, and
Yeah.
or maybe you've done?
I think a lot of it would be like when I was younger, I had a lot of ambition. I still do. I'm an ambitious person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, when I was younger, especially, and when my kids were young, I had a lot of energy. I wanted to hustle. I wanted to build the next world's,
Wow. Yeah.
technology. And so I traveled a lot. I spent a lot of time, and sometimes things don't work out. That technology didn't, I didn't change the world. It didn't get its big exit where I'm sitting here with my diamonds on my fingers, and, and didn't,
But if you don't
yeah.
put yourself out, you don't try, you're never going to know
Exactly.
where that journey will
So,
take you.
yeah, but really what I learned out of that though too is that the one thing you don't get back is that time with your kids and that time with your family.
Okay.
And so that balance is so important. So I'm still very ambitious. I'm still making big things happen, but I really prioritize time with my children, even though they're older now and one's out of the house, but it's one
Right.
of those things, time with my partner where I just realize, and time with my family, because that's actually what it's really about. At
It
the
is
end of the
in the end.
day,
Yeah.
we're all on this crazy journey, no matter what we're creating, building, doing with our lives. What's going to be the legacy? And for a lot of us, even though we hope it's maybe our work and our things
Hmm.
that we've done, that's
And we're going to
probably
get
going
to
to,
that a
yeah,
little
it's
later on. But
probably going
yes.
to fade away. But, really, ultimately, it's going to be the people that you impacted in your day to day that are going to, have the best, the most impact and the best impact on your life too. And so, it's really that balance. People talk about that, but maybe not even balance, maybe that's the wrong term, but
Right.
prioritizing the people that you love in your life is just so important no matter what you're doing.
Okay. So it was success on your terms.
I definitely learned a lot.
Mm.
I honestly, I don't think I could have gotten that education, had I paid for it. Like, the networks, the understanding of how to build a technology company, how to make adjustments to try to, increase sales, things like that, into, advanced finance. I, was able to raise funds from investors and, develop an entire community. So I actually spend a lot of time now talking about how we need more women in investment important
Okay.
because it's actually really important. Women actually receive less than 2.2% of the funding that goes into technology, like billions of dollars.
Really?
And
Okay.
there's just some things that are built into the system. Nobody's sitting there going, wah ha ha ha. It's a system that's evolving
Okay.
like
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
but it's not equal right now. It's not even close. And so for me, technology is really about solving problems. It's, if you can find a problem that you're making people's lives easier by creating that, that's great. And so there's just a whole bunch of people out there who aren't having their problems solved in the same way.
Interesting.
And so I use the example actually here in Saskatchewan. For many years, there
Hmm.
was several hockey apps that are doing very well. They're very
Hockey apps.
successful. Yeah, and it was just only a couple of years ago, a woman stepped up and she was pitching a dance app for organizing these dance competitions. And
Okay.
in my mind, I was like, how does this not exist yet? I was like, this is such a good idea. Like, even there's television shows about crazy dance moms and how expensive it is. And, it's just as competitive and super intense as hockey. But yet that problem hadn't really been solved using technology
Oh,
yet
okay. So
because it's sort of a women's problem compared to so women
you know,
hadn't stepped up to
I was
solve it
thinking about
yet.
you. You talking about
Yeah.
what was 2% of of what was 2% of the money that goes to the women's
Yeah, yeah,
entrepreneurial
through
ventures and
investment.
stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because in our society we're focused on the big concept stuff, like electric, being corporations, electric cars, stuff, and rockets and all that stuff, and the smaller stuff, smaller ideas don't seem to have that pizzazz or something?
Well,
What do you
there's an
think it is?
entire ecosystem of people who are investing in early stage ideas and people who just have, these early, the angel investors are putting that in there. And then your
Okay.
venture capitalists tend to be the ones who are kind of investing in some of those bigger
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
So there is a place for that investment, but it does, you would only feel really comfortable. Like these are very risky investments. You don't know how those companies are going to
It is.
go. And you're
Yeah.
only going to put that money in there if you kind of understand that world a little bit and think you can contribute to it. And so, an example that's used quite often is the example of Spanx, where,
Oh yes,
yeah,
Banks.
Spanx
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
are, yeah, basically,
And was she a Canadian? What was she?
yes, yeah, and she basically she had it's sucker in
Yeah,
or stuff for women to
yeah, I
wear,
remember. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's kind of
and it goes under your clothes to keep
like
everything
nylon, but
tight
with
and
support
yeah,
panels and stuff
yeah,
like that.
and so she had pitched I don't know the number offhand, but definitely close to 100 investors and been turned down over and over and over, and she was finally pitching a woman actually brought her into the bathroom, had her put it on. The woman was like, I see. She got her money and then became an exceptionally successful business.
Well, I think it's right there.
Yeah.
It's a matter of getting your product or your idea in front of the right people. I
Exactly.
mean,
And
it's like
yeah.
a lot of things. You got to have the right audience
Yeah, absolutely. And
for that
so
purpose. Yeah.
when you have fewer people and fewer women who are investing, you're going to have those problems, that are big problems for women, but maybe not seen as problems for some of the other more traditional
Right.
investors.
Right.
And so we just need more diversity in investment in technology as well as diversity in people creating technology and solving these problems because everybody has their own things that they see and their own solutions to those problems. And so, just giving that opportunity for more of those things to be solved, I think will be really powerful in our
Okay. So
society.
then, so what was your inspiration for ethical digital? So how did we get
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Well, do you know, I don't even want to mention the name, but
Okay.
yeah, I know,
Well.
but
Okay. Okay.
In Trump's first,
Oh. Oh. Oh.
yeah, in his first
All
run
right.
down
Yes.
there, I was online and I was just, it was really, COVID, with lots of things were happening online. And I just felt like a lot of the discourse and things that were happening there, I was like, this can't be healthy for people. There was a lot of people just coming and venting their rage online.
Yeah.
So I was really like, I gotta look into this. Like, I don't want to be as a social media strategist, I don't want to be the next tobacco company where I was selling all these things and I was actually making people, feel, worse and,
I think about
making,
that. I think about that all the time too.
yeah. And so I started studying it and, I worked with the University of Saskatchewan. I worked with them over several years and had a couple different students working with me to actually create and gather all the academic research we can find about how social media impacts your well-being. And so it was really it was sort of one of those things where I wanted to understand exactly what the work is that I was doing and how that impacted people.
Hmm.
So then ethical digital kind of came from that idea. The foundation of it was doing a lot of digital marketing for people that was paying the bills, that sort of
Okay.
thing. But we're really focused on doing a lot of research, like how does it affect our well-being? What are some of these issues with inclusion and technology that's sort of just built into the actual structure of the way that technology is built? What is the
Oh,
industry industry facing.
Right.
And then the third area is really, AI regulation and thinking a lot about
Okay, that's
how
something I want to get
AI is
into. Yeah.
impacting us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are sort of the three areas that we focus on because I think they're really important. And to be honest, AI, because it's just such an intense area, has really become one of the main areas of focus for me right now because there are so many things that are changing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure on businesses and people to adopt. What are the ways of actually using this tool to get the advantages of it, while also ensuring that we're taking care of ourselves, our mental
Right.
health, our
Right.
our different, our organizations, our employees. People are feeling like their jobs are still secure. How are we taking care of our environment, that sort of thing. And so,
Okay.
really thinking about a lot of these things because AI is changing things so much more quickly than we've seen as a society.
Absolutely, and that's
Yeah.
something I want to get into a little more further as we
Hmm.
go progress here. But I want to go back to the early days of ethical digital.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of entrepreneurial setbacks did you experience?
Oh man.
Uh,
I think
was it easy go to get support?
yeah,
So I've done some entrepreneurial stuff myself. I know it can be tough in the beginning.
it is.
You're wearing all the hats. You're working long hours.
Yep.
You
You're
try to
you're
get people
taking
to
out the
believe
garbage
and support
yourself.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the idea is like what?
Yeah,
So how was
no, it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's also exceptionally rewarding, right? If you can find the right formula and sort of have the right things set up for it. I think any entrepreneur would tell you that almost every day can be the very best day or the very worst day, right? Like you can have the best news that morning and then get punched in the face that afternoon. Like it's
absolutely,
just the
yeah.
nature of it because it's fairly unpredictable. Even once you get more established, there's always something that comes up that you're unexpected. In the past, even in some ways, it was sometimes easier to make decisions because a lot of the data and stuff was there. You could there was usually some sort of framework you could follow, but we're all really in a very intense time in the world where the world itself is changing. It's very tumultuous. There's a lot of external
Yeah,
things going on, geopolitically. Like, it's a
absolutely.
hard environment in
Yeah,
which to be building a business, and then it's just unpredictable because things are changing so much, and it's hard to. There's not as much of a playbook, I guess, as there would have been in the past. You
absolutely.
have to really I guess experiment and get back up and experiment and get back up and feel
Right.
and try to figure out this next version of business. But for me, the real fundamentals are always there, and that if you stick to those, you're good, and that which is your business values, right? If you're like, hey, we really want to make sure that we're giving an excellent experience to our clients, and it's really about trust. Leaning into those types of things is going to be the thing that's going to guide you through all this tumultuousness.
Right. Absolutely. Great answer. How do you balance innovation with responsible decision making?
This is not an easy question right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's also one of those things where a lot of even leaders don't really understand. And this is not on leaders either. Like even the people who are building technology and the big guys who are creating all these new AI products are
Mm.
all saying we don't really understand what the impacts of this is going to be.
Yeah.
So there's
That's
nobody who
scary.
knows
That
where
is
it's going to
scary.
be. Yeah. And so leaders are expected right now to really be making some important decisions that are quite foundational to their business, and what's going to happen. There's a lot of pressure, like I said, of people being like, if you're not using AI right now, you're behind, which is untrue. Like there's things
Yeah,
like that
I've experienced that too.
that are there. And for me, like it's actually a process. And this is something I offer, as services, is basically walking people through that. Here are your risks and rewards. Where does your business stand on these different issues? Being very clear on these things for yourself and for your team so that you can actually create something that's going to work, that's going to actually, you can measure the outcomes and make sure that it's, actually doing the thing you wanted it to
Right.
do, that you're taking kind of baby steps at first to really understand how this could impact your business before you're really diving into large scale AI projects. Really, just taking a conscious effort as your leader as going through this. And again, a lot of people are leaders, and we'll just use, bamboo shoots as, an example,
Yeah.
right? Even the people in leadership here, your work is video production and content production. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're an AI expert in understanding all the risks and what could be happening and the cybersecurity and all that kind of stuff coming out of it. So that's not easy, when you're an expert in your area of your business to suddenly now have to become an expert in AI as well.
Right.
But it is one of those things where I do believe that that is one of the most important skills that every leader should be having right now, and having that training, just even understanding it, playing it with on their own projects, just to, just have an understanding of how it works. What are the limitations? What are the dangers? how is AI, giving you incorrect information, like things like that, and really being able to understand it. So it is a time where everybody's in the same boat, no matter how comfortable you are with AI or not. We're all learning, we're all figuring out what this means for the new form of business, how we're still taking care of our
Right.
clients, how we're keeping our bottom line healthy and our employees healthy, but, while still getting the advantages of this amazing tool.
So we're going to get more into that, but before we go more into the AI part of it and how it affects business and people, what are some common misconceptions people have about being a founder of a company?
Yeah. Do you know, especially technology and entrepreneurship, right? Like it's
Hmm.
sexy. People are always like,
Yeah,
there's something to it where it
there's,
just, because everybody has the
there's a bit of a
stories of
romantic
the,
attitude. Oh, I'm an entrepreneur.
exactly. I'm in my
Mhm.
garage all hours and getting her done. And now
Yeah,
we're going to be so rich at the end of it and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But, it's even the people who are making it in technology, it's, years in, years out. Like it's an undertaking. You're building something that's very big. And there are the stories and those fancy, like that everybody's like, oh, this company was, built and bought in under a year, and that person had an idea and they're now a multimillionaire and da 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 da. That's
right.
so exceptionally rare. There's a lot of
It is.
people who are
Yeah,
having to build a
yeah,
business, and just in the same way as any other business, right?
right.
And it's not easy, and especially again, as I mentioned, in this economy, all that kind of stuff, it's extra challenging. And so I think that that's probably the other thing, is that people assume that you're in technology, that you must be completely rich and nonstop successful at everything you try is going to work, but
Well, yeah,
yeah, but
absolutely.
everybody's on a different path when it comes to building technology in that industry. Some are killing it, but they've been working at it for years. Others are, they're just getting going
Right.
and they're, doing the hustle, and everybody's on a different kind of path on that timeline. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So get back to the AI. How is AI, or how do you see AI affecting companies, organizations, the people in those companies? And one thing I'm very interested in is how is it maybe shaping the next generation of leaders?
That's a great question. It's a big, big, big question too.
Yeah. So
So yeah, so first of all, like I guess maybe I'll talk about why I'm excited about
yeah,
AI,
go
because
ahead.
I
Yeah.
think sometimes especially with the concept of ethical digital, I do concentrate on some of the risks around AI. But there's
Right.
really, I'm playing with it right now, and there's just so many things. Like it's just opened up a different way of doing work. And so, for example, something that would have taken me $15,000 a developer to create in 3 months, I can now do
A fraction of that.
myself in like under a week. And again, like I'm not a technical, developer. I'm learning, and and it's something that I do have some skills for sure, technology wise. But there's a lot of people who have those skills who are going to now be able to create things that they were never able to create
Yeah.
before. It's also going to automate some of the tasks that people just don't want to do. And,
Yeah.
a lot of that administration
Absolutely.
work that the organization needs in order to be making decisions and, pulling in numbers and that sort of thing. But, maybe stifling creativity, or, kind of the thing that person, they're like, I love 90% of my job, but I hate that type of work. And so there's a lot of neat studies out there about, actually, like, there was one that came out that basically they studied a whole bunch of organizations and people. And what they found first, because a lot of people are very concerned about job loss, but what they found is, in this particular study, nobody had lost their job. In fact, the people who were using AI regularly were
Mm.
actually working harder and more, because they were able to kind of release some of the yuck they didn't want to do before, and actually really concentrate on the creative work, and putting their skills into
And
something
enjoying it more
and
and
enjoying it
being more.
more. And I'm finding that myself too. Like
Yeah.
my joy to vie with work, like, has really come back with this, because I can just build and I can see the results right away. And, and I can try ideas that would have just been such a huge, a big undertaking to even try the idea before. And now I can just be like, hey, let's see if
Okay.
people want
Fascinating.
this. Yeah. And so it feels like some of the barriers to creating technology before and creating automations before are just removed. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity there, to really streamline some work, and, almost be looking at
Right.
AI, agents, or whatever you're building, almost as sort of like junior employees in your organization. It's going to be, I think, really
Right.
be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But of course, with any change, like we're seeing, it's changing all of society. So there's always going to be risks and rewards that come with that. And in I actually just did a TEDx in Regina, but one of the things,
Okay.
as I was preparing for that, a lot of people will talk about AI and kind of compare this revolution that we're going through to the Industrial Revolution, where everything became mechanized. And, a lot of the craftsmen and, artisans from that time were like, we can't let machines be creating these things, and so people were actually like burning down factories and
I was reading
things
about
like
that
that.
this morning.
Y-
Yeah, when they had to come up
Yeah.
with hammers and break the looms and all that stuff.
Exactly. And they were
And
just
this is
like,
like
because
in
we don't
England or
want this,
something.
yeah, we don't want this to change. We don't want our craft to change
Yeah.
and what's going to happen to our jobs and all that kind of stuff. And then what we ended up seeing after the Industrial Revolution, as it went through its process, is that we actually ended up with more opportunity. We ended up, our lifestyles that we have right now are really, we're only able to have this kind of luxury because of the Industrial Revolution. The same thing happened when the internet came into play,
Yeah.
where people were like, oh my gosh, the internet's here,
Yeah.
like all this
Gloom
stuff,
and
am I going to
doom
lose
and
jobs, all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. But we ended up seeing more opportunity, more jobs created. Social media, that sort of thing, same thing happened. But the difference was that we're 80 to 100 years for the Industrial Revolution for that to unfold. So that gives people time, to kind of get used to it. Are you still
Right.
mad about the Industrial Revolution? Not many people are.
I am very mad about it.
And then the internet took 20 to 30 years to completely change our entire world. Social media was about 5 to 6 years to completely change the world's behavior at scale. AI is expected to do this all in about 24 to 36 months. And so,
Months.
yeah, so this is such an intense change in our society that it's no doubt as humans, like we have apprehension. We're, concerned about the change. It's just happening so fast and we're not really good at changing our systems that fast and ourselves that fast. And so in my mind, I'm actually like, I think that's actually going to be an advantage that humans are going to have that time to be like, okay, we can, but should we, and have that time to be thinking and putting some limitations on this. But in the meantime, it is one of those things where it's happening. And so there are, people out there who have the belief, well, I'm not going to get involved. I don't want to see this happen. I'm going to avoid AI altogether.
And put my head in the sand and hope it just
Yeah.
goes by, and it's not.
Yeah, unfortunately, like
It's
even if you're
yours.
using the internet right now, you're using AI, like it is part of things. It's here. This is already happening.
Yeah.
So I'm of the belief system that, okay, well, let's understand it. Let's make decisions that again are good for human beings, good for the environment, good for our organizations, our families, or ourselves.
And set up maybe good policies around it.
Exactly. And just putting our own guardrails in place to make sure that we're taking care of the things that we need to. There are some things that, are going to be more complex that are basically going to be governments and the big AI companies sorting that out. And that seems scary. That's out of control of a lot of people. So there are different, areas and ways of looking at AI. For me, though, too, there's sort of three different forms of AI. So when I'm talking about
Oh, yes, sir.
AI, I'm talking about sort of the first version, or so basically the very first version of it that most of us are using right now, or if you're using
Like
AI,
chat or something.
is that ChatGPT, your
Yeah.
Gemini, your Claude, your different groups. But it's basically it's supporting us. So you're creating a social media
Like
post or a
Copilot,
blog
stuff like that.
post. Yeah, you're doing it, but you're looking at it, and you're the human putting in the idea. The AI does its thing, but then you're the human looking at what that outcome and making a decision about it and that sort of thing. The second level of AI is when there's not that many humans in the loop. So AI is just kind of making a lot of decisions because it's, gotten to that point. And this isn't new. All of our different phones, and
Smartphones.
maps and different things that we've been using for years have been using AI. It wasn't somebody sitting there being like, hey, Katrina, there's a traffic jam up ahead. No, it was AI. It was,
Right.
using and giving those kind of examples. And so there's no real humans involved in that. That's just, that's the technology doing its thing with humans out of the loop. And then the third area, and this is the area that is very scary, that, actually does need a lot of regulation and things in it. But that's the idea of AI actually building other AI. And we're there already
Yeah.
as a society. So we actually have AI out there that humans actually can't influence because we're not smart enough. We don't have the.
At the moment?
Yeah. And so we have to
Okay,
use
now you're
other
scaring me.
AI to actually do that. Yeah. So that's the thing too. But when we're talking about AI, we actually want to think about it in terms of like it's a huge, broad area. It means a lot of things to different people. But when I'm speaking about like the parts of it, that level 3 of AI, building other AI, that is scary. That needs to be regulated. That needs to have people thinking about it now. We don't want to be waiting down the road and stuff. We need to have some structures,
Well,
some guardrails in place.
yeah,
Yeah.
what it brings up, I think I mentioned to you before in one of our early conversations, that
Mhm.
the movie Terminator, Skynet,
Yeah.
when you take the AI, it's controlling everything, every facet of of life,
Yeah.
human life. And then what I've been reading is that the military is thinking about pairing the mind of AI with the body, of these humanoid
Yeah.
robots.
Yeah.
So right there, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, no, and like with the we've all had sci-fi in our lives
Yeah,
forever, and one of my favorite analogies that someone said once was, is AI going to help us get to Wall-E, or is it going to help us get to Terminator?
that's my concern. And the
I
way
don't
it's
know if
going right
either
now, I
of
think it's
those are
going more
good
the Terminator
outcomes.
route. But yes,
Yeah, but and that's the thing too, is that we just realize, even though that this is a very powerful technology, that there are areas that we as humans can control, and we need to be thinking about that and building that in right now. So yeah, so the parts that I'm excited about, and when I'm talking about a lot of these pieces, is actually really that level 1, and maybe a little bit of the level 2 things that can be
okay.
done in our day-to-day lives that are actually going to enhance our lives day to
Right.
day. But there's those big questions that are certainly coming out of those
So
bigger
regarding,
versions of
yeah,
AI. Yeah.
so we're getting to level one stage of it.
Hmm.
How do you see it affecting maybe the hiring process, hiring certain personality types? Do you, 'cause I can see it where employers will be looking for a certain type of person to be integrated into the AI systems, and then that will maybe cause animosity amongst
Yeah. Do
the
you
populace.
know?
It's like, well, I don't know how to use a computer now. I can't turn it on. Remember back in the old days, like you have
Yeah.
to learn how to use a computer. Now you have to learn how to think like AI. That,
Yes.
'cause I think it was maybe you were talking. I was talking to someone about this, where
Hmm.
there's actually a career, or there's actually a job where you're taught how to talk to AI. There's actually a
Yeah,
position for.
yeah, prompt engineers. Yeah,
Okay,
like
explain.
yeah,
Talk to me about that
yeah,
first.
yeah.
Prompt
So,
engineers.
yeah, well, especially when that first started, which is basically, can you get AI to do what you want it to do in a short period of time? And are you good at explaining to AI and having good outcomes?
So why
So
would you have to explain to AI a certain way? What is it about AI that creates that kind of
yeah, so one of the
interesting?
cool things about AI that's a little bit different than a lot of the technology we've seen in the past is it's very verbal. So you're actually telling it what to do in a way that you would describe it to another person. So instead of like when you're doing development in the past, and again, there's still developers doing more advanced technology things and stuff for sure. And that's code, and that's a certain way of thinking and writing. Whereas a lot of the new versions, like with the ChatGPT, these large language models, these different groups, they are actually, you can actually say to it, I want you to do this, this, and this. And, ask me any questions that you have. And, there's a lot of people who will have sort of formal prompts that they're like, here's the way that you need to put in a prompt. I got to say, I do it all the time right now. And I just feel like as the AI has gotten to know me, I don't require it to be like, I can actually have
Specific
more of a
stage that
conversation with it. Yeah.
okay.
Like I don't think that's as important as it was at the very beginning of AI to have the most perfect prompt. You need to learn how to speak, with your AI in a way it can
Okay, I'm
understand and
still
give it the
learning that.
information it wants. But it's sort of less about it being like, here's a template of a prompt that, is the perfect prompt. It's, you can kind of work with your AI to have
Right.
your outcomes. So yeah. So anyway, coming back to the question about jobs,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is actually one of the biggest areas that people are very concerned about. And of course they should be, right? Is your job,
Because
affected?
it may just remove
Yeah.
a certain percentage of the population that doesn't seem to have that
Yeah.
inclination to
Yeah.
communicate that way.
And, we're finding there's definitely people being displaced, in certain jobs and areas and stuff. One of the big areas is our young people, because a lot of in entry level jobs, like, researchers, things like that can now be done by AI. And so
Mm.
that's one of the things that I think a lot of businesses need to consciously be doing, is actually ensuring that they're hiring young people and such to be, taking care of their workforce in the next 5 years, right? Because you need young people in order to come in to learn the corporate culture, the nuances of working in an organization or an industry.
Right.
So that's a big area that people need to be conscious of, is actually like being like, yes, we could use AI, but let's do an and situation, where we're going to hire students and use AI and things like that. The other, thing, AI has been used for years to help people hire. Large corporations who receive thousands of applications for different jobs have been using these services. So it's actually been reasonably well studied compared to a lot of areas of AI. And certainly over time, again, accidentally, quite often, there have been a lot of examples of different groups that have been excluded from the hiring process because they don't fit into the right information that's been fed into the AI. And those tend to be women, underrepresented groups, older adults tend to be the most often
In AI. Oh,
who
really?
are sort of discriminated against. So the big
Through
thing
AI?
is, yeah, through AI. And
In what
again,
way? How's that?
there's been some things like if certain names, or certain genders or things like that, or certain experiences, right, that may be more, male oriented, and it doesn't happen on purpose. Like there's no developer who's sitting there going, "Wah ha ha ha, I'm going to exclude some people," but everybody has bias, and
And I think,
yeah,
and the AI kind of being like an artificial, the artificial intellectual brain is learning
yeah, and it's
from these
learning,
biases and creating, formulating its
yeah.
own bias.
Exactly. What the big term
Kind of
in
a closed loop.
AI is garbage data in, garbage data out, right? And
Okay, so
so,
explain that one.
yeah, so a lot of times, AI is all the decisions that are made, everything that, the concept behind AI is that you're using a large amount of data in order to inform probably one of the best decisions going forward. That's maybe a very simple way of
So, so,
describing
so,
it.
so so that's what they talk
Yeah.
about when you talk about like the learning model of it. Kind of like
Yes.
what Chad was doing. It was just whatever you put it, it's learning. It's
Yeah, so
basically,
let's use chat as an
and it was taking it all in.
example.
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's lawsuits happening all over the states
yeah.
right now because basically when these large language models were learning, they just scraped the entire internet and we're basically like, we're going to learn everything we can. The thing is, a lot of that data and things that people were putting out there, like that's intellectual property. That's
Proprietary
people who
stuff.
have been creating things for years and honing their craft, and it was suddenly just taken where, they're writing, someone's been paid, like New York Times, has been
Right, right.
creating a lot of these things
And
for
there was
years.
no disclaimer or warning to these
Exactly.
people.
No, yeah, it was
Maybe don't
just
input this stuff.
exactly. And so,
So now what happens? It's all in there now, right?
yeah, it's all in there now. And so basically, we can't say that the internet was always a fair place. A lot of our biases and stuff in society were also replicated on the internet. There's certain
Okay.
underrepresented groups who have far less information on the internet. And so, for example, like our Indigenous communities, you're doing a lot of searching on AI right now. You're going to get a ton of incorrect information. You're going to get things that may be culturally insensitive. You're going to find, photos that don't really represent, our Indigenous communities here. And because the data that's being
Oh,
used to,
it's maybe old,
to
archaic
yeah,
data
there's just,
and updated.
bad information. And so I do think over time, the information online and as more groups are able to kind of control their data and share in different ways, I think we'll actually see that being, shortened. Like we're going to see fewer issues with
Right,
that data
right.
bias as more people are sharing more data online and like parts about their culture and the problems and everything that they're solving and things like that. But it is an area that we all have to be conscious of is when we're using AI, is that what the information that we're getting is not always going to be not even charitable, is representative of a group, and sometimes it might even be negative. And so really be thinking about those types of things right now when we're in this phase of that. So it basically, what the AI has learned on is what it's going to be sharing and continuing to move forward. So
You
some
know,
of these things need to be adjusted.
right. And I was thinking, there may be, I don't know, an onus down the road on people actually putting in information into AI to maybe just to proof check their facts and just upload anything.
For sure.
There
And
may
like
be a consequence of that.
yeah, the biggest thing actually, and that's another issue right now with AI, is there's not really a lot of accountability.
No,
And
it's kind of
so
it kind of reminds me of the old school moment with Wikipedia online.
yeah,
When anybody could
yeah.
go in and you could
Yeah,
add
for a
whatever you want.
period, and then they had
If
to
you got it wrong,
change
someone else would
things,
pick up on
and
that and
Yeah, they had to change things so that you had to be like,
Yeah.
to
So the early
be
days of that.
successful to do that. Yeah, everything that is kind of new like this takes some time to get figured out. Who's accountable? How do we do this in a way that we take care of ourselves? But again, this is moving so quickly. There's a lot of people who are using it for different forms. There's, people out there who are using it for the business and, and trying to do really good things with it. There's also bad actors out there who are trying to do bad things with it. And so you can actually see like misinformation, I think, it's been around forever, but I feel like that is one of the biggest threats to our democracy right now and to our overall online experience
Wow. Threat to
as a
democracy.
culture. Yeah.
There's a soundbite.
Yeah. But there's three different types of misinformation actually. So there's the straight up misinformation where you sort of accidentally share something. It looked close enough, you maybe trusted the source and maybe it was incorrect there, so it's sort of an accident or a company thinks something's correct, it goes out. So when
Okay.
those things happen, it's really about, and it makes it much easier with AI because AI is now creating things and will sometimes slip things in there that sort of sound right, but they're not quite. It sort of mimics authority.
Yeah.
So if that gets, if you get called out and you realize you've shared something incorrect, it's really, it's a very simple solution where you're just like, hey, I'm sorry, this was wrong. Take the post down. If it, if you don't want it to be shared anymore, just acknowledge that a mistake happened, move on. The second area is about disinformation, and this is something that I think everybody in our society should be aware of. Is this is actually when bad actors or maybe just incorrect information online gets into this, and people are actually trying to share information with you on purpose to change your mind, and it can be completely misinformation, can be completely wrong.
Oh, interesting.
So we just saw CBC just released a big report that they had investigated that a lot of the Alberta separatist information that was being shared is actually being funded by other countries. and,
Well, that doesn't
and
surprise
yeah, a
me.
lot of money,
That doesn't
right? And
surprise me.
so, this is a big conversation for us. And
Misinformation
this is,
also.
yeah, but there's actually groups who are specifically putting out disinformation on purpose to change the way that people are thinking about things. So that's just one example, but there's a lot out there. So whenever you're kind of encountered with, when you see something that gets a big emotional reaction from yourself, whether it's like, this is like so cool, this is amazing, this has got to be true, into the other, side of it, like, I'm so angry that this could happen, like if you get a big emotional reaction, that's actually one of the very first things to be like, wait, let me do a double check and see if there's other sources who are
Right.
saying this outside of my community, things like that to make sure.
And you can
Yeah.
see these, we'll say, characters or agents preying on. It seems to be a downturn in our society of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Less critical thinking going on. Less people being wanting to learn about different various topics, be educated more on things,
Yeah.
and and we have the knee jerk reaction, the emotional reaction, and certain people will play on that.
Yeah,
Like what's happening down
exactly.
south.
Well, and we know algorithms too, right? So algorithms are AI, and these are what social media uses. So basically, a lot of people think of social media as their own personal newsletter, but really what it is a very sophisticated marketing platform where, they are basically selling ads to businesses like me, who are, selling these ads and that sort of thing. So they want your eyeballs on those, they want you coming back to social media as much as possible so
Right.
that you're consuming the ads. So it's a business model. And so they're going to show you the things that you want to see the most. So they're actually going to show you things that you're going to agree with, right? Because if you're angry, you're going to be like, oh, I hate coming here. I'm out of here, right? So they're going to kind of, so there's this idea that you can kind of get taken down a rabbit hole where you might start believing things that maybe aren't exactly true, things like that, because it's just been a slow sort of change. And again, there's nobody, well,
Slow
there might be
manip-
some back actors who
slow
are trying to
manipulation
doing
of
that. Yeah. But it just, so when you're talking about that digital literacy is such a core part of just understanding that what we're reading online, sometimes we're going to be very aware that we're reading something incorrect. Sometimes we're not going to be. So we just have to be very critical. I would also say, like, being seasoned, being of a certain age, we have life experience, we have the skills, we have things that we've seen and done. And so we have a better opportunity when we're looking at things to be like, that actually doesn't make sense. That is
Let me
not
do some
line
research and find
with,
out
yeah,
more about
exactly.
it.
I'm going to go to a second chef. So this is an area that I think is very important for our schools and our young people to be really addressing that AI is here, but that critical thinking piece, that I actually feel like that has to be one of the most important skills that we're actually teaching people for the future right now, is how do we interpret a lot of this information that is now being created by machines who may, really have no agenda or may have some agenda, but, we want to make sure that we're getting the best information we can. And how can we as humans parse through that to make sure that we're pulling in the good stuff that's enhancing our life and educating us and kind of realizing the dream of the internet where we can actually be learning more and all of us having access to, all the information we could ever want in order to enhance our lives, our businesses, our
Yeah, yeah.
communities. Or is it going to just be kind of a cesspool where we're, kind of bringing out the worst parts of our human side and,
Right,
that
right.
sort of thing. And, really, we're the first generation of this AI, revolution, this new AI internet. And so what we're building right now is the foundation, not just for ourselves and probably the rest of our lives, but future generations as well. So it's actually critically important that we get this right, that we're conscious about what we're building, that we can build the good things that are going to enhance our lives, but also have those guardrails in place to make sure that we're taking care of not just ourselves, our family, our businesses right now, but our future generations as well.
And so speaking of those future generations, let's think about my kids. I have a daughter and a son, and both in elementary. I test them every once in a while. I'll see something on YouTube, whatever, on my phone. Hey, look.
Yeah.
Malachi, my son, my daughter's Anthea. Okay, hey guys, look at this. Isn't that cool? And then Malachi's gonna be 12 pretty soon. He goes, Dad, that's AI.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? I always thought it looks real. How can you tell? That I could tell that's AI slop.
Right. Yeah.
So they're being taught already how to differentiate. Because a
Yeah.
lot of the AI videos, graphics are very realistic.
They are.
But they can know because they're growing up with that. They can tell the difference, which is good to know.
They might have a quicker mind in that way.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
can just right away. Oh, that's AI. No.
Yeah. And I think probably too, right, that, we're kind of in this weird time of an assault on truth, right? Where,
Assault on
almost,
truth.
yeah,
Look at
almost,
the sound bites here. Keep talking.
yeah. But almost everybody, like fake news is just thrown around, regularly. So even if it is correct information, you can discount it by saying it's fake news, things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I do think right now having some of those sources that we can trust and believe in, our news sources are becoming more important than they ever have been, to ensuring that research is done, is that journalistic
Real
integrity,
journalism. Yeah.
things like that. And again, there's, issues with the media system in general, that people have, but, it's one of those things where we do need different institutions to be stepping up and doing checks and balances on other institutions right now. And just making sure that, again, we're taking care of ourselves. And we're, one of the interesting things I'm seeing from a professional version is actually a lot of regulatory bodies who sort of govern different industries, like realtors associations and things like that, are starting to step in and saying, here's what the guidelines should be for our industry.
Oh,
And I
really?
think that's really
Okay.
interesting to see, because I think that's really important for those industry associations to be putting that out there, because they're also looking at the future of, what's the integrity of our
I was thinking that
industry.
those industries
Yeah.
are based on reputation and trust, and all. You start losing trust.
Yes.
It's hard to get back
Yeah, you lose that
in
trust
sales,
and it's
especially
over. Yeah. And so
marketing.
this is, I often talk about this as, very simple when you're making a decision about whether you want to be using AI in whatever you're doing or not for your business, even for yourself, is this going to enhance trust in my business, or is this going to erode it by doing this? And so it's a quick little simple thing. So the AI may be there, you could do this thing, but if your clients found out that you did that and maybe weren't taking care of their information, things like that,
Right,
in a correct way, whatever, like just really being conscious of how is this going to be okay. So having a chat bot is probably just fine because people are pretty comfortable with that, in an
Yeah.
AHI chat bot and all that kind of stuff. But maybe actually having a fake person answer the phone, people might not be comfortable with that yet,
I've seen that.
and so
I've actually
that's,
experienced that already
yeah, so that's going
within
to
the
erode
office settings and stuff
trust.
like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So, it just depends. And some businesses are going to be like, yeah, we're full on in AI, and that's going to attract certain employees and clients. There's going to be others who are like, we're going to be very conservative on AI. We want to do this and that. That'll attract other different types of people. This is a time right now when organizations need to be looking at it and making decisions and communicating those decisions too, about how aggressive they're going to be, what types of ways they're doing it, and how they're consciously taking care of their employees and that trust.
wow. So Katrina, if you were in the position, what kind of policies would you like to see brought to the forefront, maybe to,
Yeah.
to address certain issues that you've seen?
There are certain things, and again, there's different groups who have different accountabilities to certain parts of this. So I'm a believer that there's really four groups who influence the internet. So the first one is your funders. Those are the people who are putting money in, your angel investors, your venture capitalists, where we started this conversation.
Right.
Governments, corporations who are building large tech, businesses who are even putting things into ads. The second group, putting money into ads. So the second group is your builders. So these are the people who are actually building the software, and this is from
Okay.
the person
The
in their
data centers and all that
garage,
stuff,
yeah, the
hardware.
person in their garage, all the way to the biggest companies in the world, who are probably more influential in some countries. So these are the people who are actually building the things, and they have their own role here to be thinking about these things. The third group is the content creators, and these are the ones who are, people like us who are building a lot of things. We're putting out a lot of content. It's the marketing companies, the influencers, the podcast creators, your Aunt Judy who's posting every day, right? The people who are creating that content that keep you coming back to the internet and participating in it, and especially social media. And then the third area is users. So in general, so almost the entire population
Yep.
of
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
of North America
Yeah.
are using the internet in different forms. And so, of these different groups, several of them have different responsibilities to what they need to be doing for this. And again, leaning back to is this level 1, 2, or 3 in terms of what the impact is here? So, there's some different areas, like from those large groups, like I think government and these large AI companies, particularly, need to be working together now. And the AI companies are even saying, like, we need guardrails. There's a conflicting idea happening basically between the US and China, the idea that there's a race for this AI. And if you start putting guardrails around, you're going to lose. But so it should just be all just like go. So that potential and that push really is conflicting against that. We're doing something really big. One of the biggest things that our society has faced, we need some conscious thought around this. We need some time to
I
be
think we do.
thinking. We need to be building
Yeah.
guardrails. We need to have maybe some, just different, but we need those minds who are actually building and thinking about society to be working together right now. A big area that's also something that I think is extreme is cybersecurity and
Okay.
the idea of like all the things that are happening in our geopolitical arena right now. So when we were, in Canada's technology community has been, building for many years, but we've always been extremely integrated with the United States. So our professional systems into all
Yeah.
of our networks, into, all of our
And that was always a
technologies,
concern
yeah,
for me.
storage,
Yeah.
everything like that. And so a majority of the large software that majority Canadians use in their different industries are from other countries.
Yeah.
Your data is being stored in other places. So for me, I feel like right now, and the federal government's doing some things around this with their new AI policies. But what I'd love to see is an identification of all the different critical software that's needed in different industries. So for example, even small businesses, things like QuickBooks, right? Doing your,
Okay. Okay.
things
Yeah. Yeah.
like that, right? And doing an evaluation of that and ensuring that we have options to store our information in Canada, with those different groups potentially, or we're choosing actually and building homegrown companies here that we're actually putting money in to ensure that they're just as secure, things like that, that can ensure that we
Right.
have these backups, just to make sure that we're also building our own innovation economy. But in the meantime, also ensuring that we're keeping our information and data safe, because that's going to be one of the most important things of the
Okay.
future.
So
Yeah,
I
one of the big
heard
resources.
a couple weeks ago that there's a big plan for the federal government to build data centers in
Yeah,
Canada. Is that part of the whole program? To keep
that's part of the,
Canadian
yeah,
information data in the
yeah.
country?
And they are, so those moves are happening.
So,
And
okay,
yeah,
speak to that.
yeah, so I think this is a really important area. Now, data centers have, there's a lot of opinions around data centers. It's a big area, and really the challenge is compared to other kinds of, actually like. Doing your computing and actually doing that development work and the way that they work together, AI requires more power in order to do that work than your old school computing that you used to do. And
Yeah.
so it just requires more energy. And so these data centers are being built and they require a lot of energy. They require a lot of cooling, things like that. So when it comes to data centers, to me, there's two things. Number one, we need them. We want them also for that cybersecurity, but there is an economic value often, especially in the building. It's a large large infrastructure projects. You're going to get a lot of, kind of immediate economic value from building these things.
Right.
But, there's two things that need to happen anytime you're considering a data center. And number one is an environmental assessment that's very clear. We've looked at this. Here are the impacts, making sure that that's being shared with the community so there's a complete understanding of what people are getting into. And the second part is that community consultation, ensuring that the communities where these data centers are being built understand exactly what that looks like. And Saskatchewan is really well positioned actually to be hosting a lot of data centers. We
Yeah.
have strong power here. We have strong cooling. Our winters are really nice for that cooling situation. So as long as we're bringing in, and we've had data centers here for years in Saskatchewan,
Oh, really?
like this is
Yeah, I'm
not
just learning about
new.
this stuff.
Yeah, it's been, we've had several,
We've had.
that have been running for years around here. But this is one of those things where it's an opportunity, and it does kind of need to move fast. But it's also one of those things where I think those two crucial things need to happen so that we can still build here, but we have a full understanding of here's what the impacts are going to be. Yes, we can absorb that, or this area, it's not going to impact, birds or whatever, and in these
Well,
areas,
let's talk
and
to that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you're talking about that first part of it, the environmental
yeah.
effects. I don't fully understand the data center. So what all could affect the environment in a negative way? What are the
Yeah.
negative offshoots of this?
Yeah, great
Producing
question.
these?
So, what some communities are seeing, especially in the States, is they're actually running out of water because water is used to cool some of
Oh,
this
liquid
stuff.
cools.
So, maybe the people in that community aren't actually getting water where the data center is being serviced instead.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, there are examples of this happening all over the place, right? With any large infrastructure project, you're going to see impacts. So, it's really for me, like when these are being rolled out, just being exceptionally clear, being like, here is what the studied impacts are. Here's what we're exactly expecting so that we can choose locations and things like that where we can minimize those impacts and ensure that we can get that economic value. We can take care of our cybersecurity and such, but we are consciously minimizing the impacts of the data centers. I also believe in the future. Just, I think right now we're at this
Okay.
peak area where we need a lot of this power. People are, getting these infrastructure pieces set up in order to have this AI future. But, there's actually a lot of different ways. I think we're going to see AI requiring less power to actually be using it. So a lot of there's market pressure on these large companies to make it so because they recognize the environmental issue is one of the biggest problems here.
Right.
And so they're actually creating things like I believe it was Gemini who actually put out something that said that they've reduced the amount of time, the processing power required by a third or something like that. Like there's something,
Well,
there's,
third, that's a
yeah.
lot.
So they were, yeah, like there's just
Wow.
people who are concentrating on these pieces to try to make it better environmentally. So I do believe we'll get there to a point where it just requires less power in order to do these things. There's also different areas of technology like edge computing and things that people are talking about that could potentially replace this large scale amount used, of power used. But ultimately, I think it's going to be market pressure. People don't want the environment ruined in order for this opportunity to
Exactly.
happen. So how can we be building things and building computing that requires just less power to use? And so I do think it'll happen. We're just sort of in this time right now where it is how it is. So we're trying to react to that, but I do think it'll get better in the future.
It's kind of interesting that every time we get to a point where should I be? I hate to say kumbaya, in check with nature, getting back to protecting the environment and doing things more efficient. We develop a technology that takes us back a couple steps. We have to get back to where we were progressing. It's kind of weird how that
Yeah,
happens.
and I think again we're seeing that in that race for AI, right? Where some of these things get ignored in the order, in order
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
sense of innovation in general. And so I do think that market pressure will, and and just societal pressure will be like, no, this is important. We want to make sure we're doing it this. And again, I feel like Canada has the biggest opportunity to do this and
I think it
lead
does.
in this area to be like,
Yeah.
we are not only building this. We have some of the best AI academics and companies in the world here, and I know that we could work together to actually create like a world standard in environmental and also societal like inclusion, things like that. I know we can create systems and different forms of AI and processing and all that kind of stuff that will take us there, but we do need to prioritize it so that if I when you say if I had my magic wand, what would I
Yeah.
do? That
Yeah.
would be it. I would actually say the government would set such an ambitious standard to be like, we're going to be leaders. We're going to be in the top 5 in the world of AI, but we're going to do it this way. And we want other people to be following us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. Great. So Katrina, you're a sought after keynote speaker. What do you hope audiences leave with after hearing you speak about these topics? And
Yeah, I
with
feel like in
technology.
some ways, like I hope a little bit more literacy, right? That digital literacy, they just
Yeah.
understand things a little bit more, from somebody who's been living in it and studying it. So, instead of making a decision based on, fear and not knowing, you can actually be like, okay, I understand this a little bit better and I can make a decision. Yeah, it's still scary, it's still big, it's still a lot of change, but I feel confident that I have the information I need to be like, okay, here's the guardrails I want to put in place. So, a little bit of inspiration. I do think, with great power comes great responsibility, and we've all been handled,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
handed this great responsibility. And so I want people to kind of leave with this understanding that really cool things can happen and those exciting, magical things you can build. But there's also, we need to be thinking about this and we need to be conscious. We need to be taking care of our businesses, ourselves, our society, our children, and, being aware of these things in not an emotional way, in a way that is like, okay, let's make some decisions. Let's figure out how to make this work as a society.
Okay. Um, what is one question that seems to always come up that's maybe a difficult question to answer from your audience about technology or whatever?
Yeah.
A common question that you've seen or heard.
I think it's the idea is AI going to kill us
Yeah.
all? Yeah, I would
Yeah, I
say
think that's a big
that
one right
that's
now.
a,
Yeah.
and honestly, nobody knows the answer to that. I think we're going to be okay. Like, I think this will be like the Industrial Revolution, the internet, social media. It's going to come in. It's going to be an uncomfortable, period of time, and then we're going to come out on the other side in a better situation. But it's just hard to say. Nobody knows how this is going to go, and we just again need to be conscious as we're building it, and each and every one of us has a role to play in how this goes. We all have power in how we're using it and how we're sharing the information that comes out of it.
Okay, great. Let's get into a little more of your leadership style. What is it?
Well, I always remember the idea of like leading from behind, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, where, yes, you have your ideas and stuff, but you kind of let people shine. You give them direction and, you find their passion, allow them to kind of get there. So that's always been sort of, I guess, my leadership style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. What makes someone coachable? Another one for you.
Yeah, and that's one of the most important things that you can have in your life is being coachable.
Hmm.
And really it's the idea that you'll listen. You don't automatically
Be
shut
open.
down advice. You don't always take it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes it's not relevant or not going to be the best thing, but ultimately you are willing to action, other people's ideas if it makes sense.
Okay. Good. Yeah. How can experienced leaders create more opportunities for the next generation?
Yeah, again, conscious leadership. So being aware of, okay, our young people are being affected in the job market. What can we be doing to ensure that our organization will be okay in 5 years? What are some of the things that we can do here to see the advantages of AI, but also make sure its guardrails are in place and that everything's safe. Just really
Right.
that being conscious about these particular things, I think is the way forward.
Okay. So with all this discussion about AI and how it's changing the workplace and people and organizations, what do you think it holds for us overall
I
for
actually,
society?
yeah, I think we're going to get into a position where people can create in a way that they've never been able to create before.
Create.
And
Okay.
so we can, they're going to have far less barriers to that thing, whatever it is inside of you. So, I just look at people creating music right now using AI, right? Who maybe didn't have the skills before, but they have the love.
I used to, yeah. Well, I create music, I produce music and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So what it's done, I've noticed. I just recently got into that. So what I suggested, in the old way, you'd have a band. You'd go into a studio
Yeah.
and you pay for studio time,
Yeah.
and that can be pretty costly
Yeah.
depending on how many tracks you're working on, how often it takes to work. With the AI software now, they have studio tools with AI that you could produce a studio album at home
Yeah.
with all the inputs for the guitars, the drums, and everything in your vocals. It's just as good or better,
Yeah.
kind of scary, than using a studio.
Yeah. I think we're going to see a whole different area coming out. We're seeing an art as well, right? And so it's probably going to be like, here's your pointillism, here's your whatever, but
Yeah.
here's your AI generated art,
I,
right?
I took
Like,
art
and
at
yeah,
so if I remember that.
yeah.
Pointillism, yeah.
So it'll be like, here's your country music,
Yeah.
here's your regular music, but, here's your AI generated music. And so I think we're going to see whole new genres coming out. I think we're going to see creativity at a level that we've just never seen before. Because again, you might not be able to pursue music in a certain form because maybe you don't have a job, whatever the thing is. But now if you want to do it, if you have that passion inside of you, even if you don't have the skills, you can do it. And so it's the same thing for me. Like, I'm building these websites, I'm building technology right now, and I could have never done it before. And it's bringing me joy. That's my creative space where I get to be like, ooh, I wonder if people want this. I think it's a cool idea, but will they? You
Wow,
know?
fascinating.
And
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So I think we're going to have a much more creative society. That would be my ideal coming
Okay.
out of
Hey,
AI.
I'm all for it then. Hey,
Yeah.
absolutely. These are my personal reflection questions.
Okay.
What accomplishment are you most proud of, and of that doesn't appear on your resume? What have you done that you're proud of that doesn't appear on your resume
Doesn't
that
appear
we
on
may
my
not know about?
resume. Okay. The easy question to answer there is your kids, right? Like
Oh,
my
well,
kids
hey, there
are,
you go.
yeah,
Check.
yeah, are pretty, yeah, my children are pretty
Hmm.
amazing. I think in a lot of ways, like one of the things that I probably wouldn't put on a resume, but something I'm really proud of is how many careers I've launched. I've had a lot of students work for
Okay.
me over
Kind
the
of
years.
mentorship and all that stuff. And
Yeah, yeah. And now I see them out in the world being professionals, being adults. And you're just like,
okay, okay.
it's so exciting me to see somebody, and have worked with them in the early part of their career to seeing them moving into, more advanced stages. And so I would say for me, that's something that I probably wouldn't have on a resume, but something I'm very proud of
Mm.
is, I think I've had about 50 people go through ethical digital, young people who are now
Okay.
out in the world building and looking at things through the same lens, about that responsible, use. And, now they're creating massive websites for large organizations and, things like that, it's just so exciting to see them step into their power and who they're going to be. And I'm just happy I got to be a part of that. So that's something I'd say I'm actually particularly proud of
Great.
is some of the really great people I've got to meet and start their careers.
Okay. Well, then, what makes you excited about the future of ethical digital?
Do I don't mean to sound repetitious, but
Hmm.
coming back to that idea of creating, like I just want to be in a position where if I have an idea that I think is going to make people's lives better in some form, I can just build it. And for me,
Okay.
that's what I want to be. I want to have a lot of tech, running through that company. I also want to be, doing a lot of speaking, influencing businesses so that, again, if we all work together and have a similar mindset where we're comfortable, where we understand the risks, but we're moving forward for the good of humanity, then that's success for me. So it's really continuing to do what I'm doing right now, building it louder, bigger, probably creating more of an online space of talking about these things so I can even reach more audiences. But
Mm.
it's also one of those times where it's a hard thing to answer because I'm going to be building all summer, but maybe by fall I'll be like, this is not the direction. I now know
Right.
everything now
Right.
is to go to a totally different direction. And, I've learned something totally different about AI and here's what I want to do instead. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a time of change, reflection, but also excitement. And let's try some things.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
What's one habit that every leader should have or develop?
I would just read the book Atomic Habits. It's
The book, what?
the book is called Atomic Habits, and
Atomic Habits?
yeah, it's really about the idea of like we often end up like going for a diet or something like that, and we suddenly do this big burst of energy towards something, but that
Mm.
becomes somewhat unsustainable over time. You may accomplish the goal, you may not, but you're just so the idea is like how do you build things into your day to day that you just do all the time? It's just who you are, and so for me, I do 10 push-ups a day, no big deal, but but there's a lot of people who are like, what, 10 push-ups a day? That's a lot of
What two
push-ups, and
people were back?
other people are going to be like, that's ridiculous. Like only 10,
It's like
but
routine, discipline,
yeah,
something you
but the
do all the
idea is
time.
just building it in and
Yeah.
my arms are reasonable. They're not
Okay.
bulky, they're reasonable. And so
Okay.
that's the
All
idea is
right.
just like, what
Absolutely.
can you build into your everyday that's just going to help you become the person you want to be?
Okay. Here's one. If there was a CEO watching this episode, what would you want them to do or make a change?
Yeah.
What kind of change would you like to see?
CEOs, leaders are going through so much right now.
They
Again,
are.
the economic
Yeah.
environment, trying to keep your business stable, as well as having to keep this whole excitement, about AI. Like,
Hmm.
yikes, that's just a lot on people's plates. And so, so really, the big thing I want to, would help people, come from that CEO is that idea of get to the point of peace around AI, where you understand it in a way that you feel comfortable about it, like where you're like even if you have reservations about certain areas, that's fine, but you
right.
need to understand it. And because there's nothing worse than that idea of fear, you know,
And it's a
and
human
making decisions
thing.
based on really not knowing. And again, this is one more skill set that we all have to learn. That's tough, you know, and we're all trying to navigate a very complex environment, but it's crucial. It's a really crucial thing to spend your
Okay.
time on.
Last question before we end with a rapid fire round. The
Yeah.
final set of questions.
Okay.
Just a final
Yeah.
part. So, what's the biggest opportunity business leaders are overlooking right now? Or what do you think is the biggest
Yeah,
opportunity?
again, it's what are the small things that we can be doing to see these wins right now in our
Okay.
organization with AI? And again, the ones that aren't that risky, you know, and maybe not even as far as AI, you might just want to put automations in place, right? Where you're like,
Right.
if this thing happens, this happens, because that's much easier right now too.
Right.
So yeah, so I think that's the biggest opportunity is the small gains that you can get right now to get
Okay.
yourself, your team excited about the things that can happen in the future.
Okay. Great. So we're at the rapid fire round now.
All right.
Coffee or tea?
T.
Tea. Okay. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Okay. Book or podcast?
Book.
Okay. But you're going to be watching this podcast.
Oh, this podcast. I'll be
Yes.
all over this. I've
Yeah.
listened to this many times.
In-person meetings or virtual? Well, you're in the industry, you know.
I'm a bit of both. I love
Yeah.
a virtual,
I think it's
just
the way it
the
is
in
now,
and
like
out.
hybrid.
Yeah, but I'm a strong believer in a patio. The power of the
Oh,
patio.
yeah. Absolutely. I'm always on deck somewhere. Yeah. One app you use the most on your phone or whatever. What's the most?
Actually, my Google Fitbit, my Google,
Oh, okay.
I check in on
Yeah.
how I'm doing physically all the time.
Okay.
I love that stuff.
If you could, one person in history you would want to meet, talk to.
Yeah. Maybe this is all circling right back, but I'm going to come back to Oprah. Like she's just a person I would
Okay.
love to hear, you know, those stories about how she made it happen and her advice to, you know, keep going.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. One technology you wish more people understood, maybe AI. Or,
I think AI is
I
probably
think
the
AI.
answer to
Yeah,
that one.
I think
Yeah.
that's the one. Okay. Favorite way to spend the weekend?
Ooh, gardening in the summer.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm a huge gardener.
What's inspiring you now?
Building on AI
Yeah, okay.
and I'm reading a lot because we're getting into summer and that always, you know, I use books like drugs, you know, if I want to come down, I read something that's going to calm me down before bed. If I want to get some motivation, I just totally like, let's go and I'll read a business book or something that gets me high.
Okay, great. Final question. What does rooted here mean to you?
You know, I love that question because I love Saskatchewan. And I think that when, you know, we have all these amazing resources here, but really our biggest resources are people and our work ethic and the way that we treat people and our understanding of how community works. And so the idea of rooted here means you're from here, you have those values, you are representing Saskatchewan, but you're building bigger. And, you know, you know, bloom where you're planted was a sticker that my grandma had on her on her fridge growing
Bloom
up.
where you're planted?
Bloom where you're planted,
Bloom
and it
where
was a
you're
picture of a
planted.
dandelion coming through
Okay.
some cement, right? And it's like, you know, not everybody views Saskatchewan as the place to be, whereas I'm like, I would not want to live anywhere else. I love this place, but what can we be doing to be leaning into our natural strengths from here and to influence the world to be better because we're pretty awesome here in Saskatchewan.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Before we go, Katrina, if someone wants to find out more about ethical digital, where can we go?
Ethicaldigital.ca or katrinagerman.com.
Great, beautiful, perfect. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Okay. Rooted Here, Business and Leadership Podcast.